So in this video, I'm going to start talking about the urinary system. So this is an introduction. The urinary system primarily includes the kidney. So the kidney is the major structure in the urinary system, and it is actually said to be a major excretory structure. And this excretory structure has to do with the fact that it excretes metabolic wastes. So the kidney functions in the excretion of metabolic waste. So you might ask, what is this metabolic waste? Well, one waste product that we breathe out is carbon dioxide. So it's actually not carbon dioxide, but rather it's nitrogenous waste. So we use a type of nitrogenous waste, which is referred to as urea. So urea is the way that we package the nitrogen, so it is not toxic to our body. Now, another structure in our body that is also excretory, or actually has an excretory function, would be the skin. So the skin also excretes a little bit of urea. And in fact, it is the reason for why when we have sweaty clothes, which has urea in it, the sweat does, why bacteria then break down that urea and make our sweaty clothes, if we do not wash them quickly enough, they make them smell like ammonia. So ammonia is also a byproduct, a metabolic waste byproduct that some organisms excrete. So like, for example, freshwater fish excrete ammonia, whereas we don't want to use that much water to get rid of our nitrogenous waste, and so we use urea. So that is the structure in this system. Remember that a system is composed of more than one type of organ. So this would be the kidney right there. We also have what is referred to as the ureters. And they are tubules that carry the urine from the bladder, excuse me, from the kidney to the bladder. So they carry urine, or they transport urine from the kidney to the bladder. And the bladder is where we store urine prior to getting rid of it. So this would be my diagram. This actually shows the bladder right here. And the bladder is actually a very muscular structure. We'll talk about what or how we control urination, but the bladder is smooth muscle. And so when it contracts, when it's full, it gives us that sensation of needing to urinate. And so from the ureter, we then have a structure that carries the urine out of the body, which is called the urethra. So that urethra is in females very short, and it has a separate opening. So it has what is called the urethral orifice. In males, the urethra actually travels through the penis, and so it's much longer in males. And the males just have one opening for both their urinary system and their reproductive system, whereas females have two separate openings. So you'll also notice here we have some major blood vessels. So this would be your vena cava, your inferior vena cava, this large blue one. This is my abdominal aorta. And so when we talk about the blood vessels, that blood is being shunted to the kidney for filtration. It is also, the kidney also has a separate circulatory system, which actually supplies it with oxygen and nutrients, because actually the kidney uses a lot of energy in order to filter our blood. So these are referred to as the renal vein and the renal artery. So renal is a word like, we remember we talked about hepatic, that means liver. Renal is a word that is associated with the kidney. So we have the renal artery carrying blood to the kidney. And then away from the kidney is, this is my renal artery, is my renal vein. So the renal artery would be red and the renal vein would be blue. So when we look at the position of our kidneys, they are actually in the lower back region. So this is the top of like your pelvis. That's your iliac crest of your pelvis. And one of the interesting things about our kidney is it sits behind the abdominal cavity wall. And so this space, remember, is called the peritoneal cavity. And sitting behind that peritoneal cavity would be the kidneys. So the kidneys are said to be retroperitoneal. Position. So they're behind the peritoneal cavity where the abdominal organs sit. So the peritoneal cavity where the abdominal organs sit. So sometimes if somebody gets kicked or hit, or if they're in an accident where they get like sustained trauma from their low back region, that is going to potentially damage the kidney. And when the kidney is damaged, it can sometimes lead to having blood in the urine. The other thing to note about this position is that there is like a fatty layer of tissue. So this is fat in yellow, and this fat is called visceral fat. And it actually, in this particular instance, helps to cushion the kidney. So if you do receive a blow, it helps to cushion it, but it also keeps it from moving downward. And so it is actually stabilizes its position. And so sometimes when people are excessively losing weight for whatever reason, because of disease or because of just famine, the kidney will drop a little bit, and this actually causes a kinking of the ureter, and that can be actually very dangerous for a person to lose so much of their body fat that the kidney changes its position. So if we look at the previous diagram, the kidney sits up here, they're not showing the fat here, but you can imagine if this moves down, you could get a kink in this ureter. So you want the urine to kind of drip, 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 drip into the bladder. So we want this to be open. And we also don't want stuff to move up from the bladder to the kidney. So we don't want things to move the wrong way. So for example, if you get a bladder infection, let's say, if you get a urinary tract infection, which is in the urethra, it goes up and it gets into your bladder. If it travels, if that bacterial infection travels up to the kidneys, then you can get really, really sick, and it can damage the kidneys, and you can go into renal failure. So that is another point about this, the importance of these ureters and their relative position to the kidney.